Today on America's Test Kitchen, Bridget shows Chris how to roast chicken in a skillet, while gadget guru Lisa McManus reveals the Test Kitchen's favorite lemon reamer. And finally, Julia uncovers the secrets to foolproof skillet lemon souffle. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen.
Every vocation has a key skill, and if you want to play lead guitar like Jerry Garcia, you better learn the first few measures of China Cat Sunflower. Here in the kitchen, however, if you want to be a great cook, you better learn how to make a really good skillet roast chicken, and it better not look like this. Overcooked meat, really flabby skin like this, and a really greasy, liquidy sauce. So let's go into the kitchen with Bridget and figure out how to make a great skillet roast chicken just like a pro. Bridget, we have a letter from a viewer.
Hey, we've got one person watching.
We got one person. And she writes, why is it so difficult to balance the dark meat and the light meat of the chicken while you are cooking it? Dark meat that's pink inside is gross, her words specifically, and dry chicken breasts are too. So we have gross white meat and gross dark meat. You've got to solve the problem.
That's right. Well, we are going to skillet roast this chicken, and we're going to do a couple of things along the way to make sure both the white and the dark meat are evenly cooked. I'm going to show you how. The first thing we're going to do is cut up a chicken. Okay, if you look at the architecture of a chicken, you can see the leg meat or the dark meat is protected where the breast meat is exposed and it gets more of the direct heat. So we're going to cut this apart and cook it more evenly.
And even it out. Okay.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to start with my leg quarters here. You can see this flap of skin. That's where I'm going to make my entry cut using a very sharp knife and just following as close to the chicken as I possibly can. So once I make a cut up to a certain point, I'm just going to pop out the leg, and that's going to show me exactly where I want to cut. And if you flip it over, there's a little piece of meat right in here. It's called the oyster. And that is a really great piece of meat.
That's a good trick, yeah.
That we want to keep. All right, so just want to follow.
So it's sort of a clamshell like this.
That's right. That's right.
You didn't really cut through anything. You just cut some of the skin away.
That's right.
And popped it out and finished cutting.
That's
you didn't
right.
cut through bone.
That's right. I'll show you again. Okay, this side. I'm going to turn it around, this side. Again, that flap of skin there. Make my first cut. Just follow that in there. Pop it out. There's that joint. And again, I'm going to go back in there and grab that little oyster and just follow right along. So now, you've got two pieces here. You've got a leg quarter. If you turn it over there, you can see that there's a delineation of fat between the drumstick and the thigh. That's going to tell you exactly where the joint is between the two. You can see this little line here? So if I take my knife, it's kind of a sure bet every time. Take your knife, go right through. That's where the joint is. Again, if your knife hits resistance, you just move it over.
There you go.
There we go.
On the line, perfectly.
All right. All right, so we've got two drumsticks, two thighs. Just want to cut off any excess skin at this point. All right, now let's get rid of the wings. Well, what I like to do is I like to kind of feel around in there and see where the joint is. You can kind of tuck your thumb in there and just take your boning knife and kind of work it right around. Okay, I'll show on this side.
Yeah, sometimes when people don't know how to do this, they take a huge amount of the meat off the breast when they take the wing off.
That's right, but you can see most of it is still right on the breast. Okay, so now it's pretty easy to see exactly where to take the breast apart from the backbone because you've got, again, this little line. And now I find if you take a pair of shears and you start cutting right along that line, and you want to use good kitchen shears for this. You don't want to use a knife. I mean, you can use a knife, but it's not as safe as kitchen shears. Again, here's that line of fat.
Looking at that line, okay.
Yeah, see that? That's going to tell you exactly where to cut it. It'll be a nice, neat package. Now we want to cut this breast in half. To start from the back side, you want to take a boning knife or sharp knife, and there's a little piece of cartilage here. You just want to take it down until you reach the bone. So it's just a very shallow cut. Now I'm going to kind of crack this, and you see what's in there is this bone right underneath, right there, that dark bone. So I'm just going to take my thumb, kind of run it down one edge, and down the other edge to free it. All right?
That's my favorite part is you rip it right out of the chicken.
Rip it right out. So I'm just going to grab it and rip it out of the chicken.
So we were talking just a few minutes ago about whether you actually had to do that or not. Now, what if you didn't take that out?
If that goes back in there, it's going to be really difficult to cut this into 2 equal halves and so that they would cook evenly. So goodbye to that. Now, couldn't be easier to figure out where to make the cut, just straight through. And you can only do this with a sharp knife. If you do this with a dull knife, you're going to get 2 chicken breasts and maybe a few less fingers.
By the way, you should also use a knife that has a nice handle that has some texture to it, because it doesn't get as slippery as some wood handles or other types.
All right, so I've got a little bit more work here to do. I'm going to cut each of these breasts in half again to make them more even sized with the rest of the pieces. But I've got a little bit of oil here. That's 2 teaspoons of vegetable oil. If you wouldn't mind heating that up in the skillet over medium-high heat, we want to get that to the point where it's shimmering. Now again, super sharp knife, and that is an 8-piece chicken. I'm going to pat these dry with paper towels because we're going to saute these. We want to get a really good crisp skin started, and the only way to do that is to really start to dry off the excess moisture from the surface area. I'm going to season these chicken pieces very well with salt and pepper. I think we're getting close there. See, what's happening is the oil is starting to travel all by itself. It's starting to get a little shimmery, a little jiggly, starting to move.
Do that again. Okay, so I'm ready and the pan's ready. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to put these pieces in skin side down. And you know it's nicely heated
when you hear the noise.
When you hear the noise, that's right. All right, so we're going to cook these chicken pieces without touching them. We don't want to move them around because we want the skin to get really good and crisp.
Okay, we'll be right back, and we're not going to touch the chicken.
All right, so it's been about 5 minutes. Let's take a look. Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. Okay. All right, so that looks great. Now I'm going to turn it down to medium-low, and we're going to ruin this crisp skin because I'm going to add 3/4 cup of chicken broth. Cover the pan, and we're going to steam the chicken until the breast meat registers about 155 degrees and the thigh meat registers about 170 degrees. Now, cooking with a liquid, in this case broth, offers a much kinder way to cook the chicken. It's not going to get tough. It's not going to get dried out.
So it's a braise, essentially.
Essentially, it's kind of steaming. Pan steaming is what we're doing. We're going to do this, and it's going to take about 10 to 16 minutes. All right, so it's time to check on that chicken. Looking flavorful. Just going to turn the heat off here for a second and take temperature. So we know that these are as far as we want to go, but if you take a look at that skin, it is flabby now. So I am going to transfer these chicken pieces to this plate.
A lot of the flavor from that chicken came out into the broth, into the pan. So now you have the makings of a great sauce here.
An incredible sauce. All right, so I'm going to pour all these drippings into a measuring cup. We're going to save those. Just want to wipe out the skillet because we're going to re-crisp that skin. I'm going to heat. This is another teaspoon of oil. I'm going to put the chicken back in, skin side down. We're going to cook them for about another 5 minutes until the skin gets incredibly crisp. Now, I do want to keep an eye on it at this point. I don't want it to get too dark, but this is a great way to re-crisp the chicken. So I think we're good to go. Let's check the temperature here. Breast meat should register at 160. There we go. Thigh meat will be at 175. So we're ready to take this out. You can see how beautifully crisp and golden brown that skin is.
This is a great recipe.
Chicken is evenly cooked. So now, I'm gonna let that rest there while we make our pan sauce. Just want to loosely tent it. Here's that reserve liquid that I poured off before. I'm gonna get rid of a lot of the fat. Just spoon that off. The fat separator works great too if you have it.
Yeah, but with a really small amount like that, sometimes they don't work too well.
That's true. All right, so I'm just gonna fortify this with some chicken stock. We want about 3/4 cup of liquid. Got a teaspoon more of oil. I'm gonna heat that up. Just over low heat. Remember, this pan is pretty hot. I'm going to add in 1 minced shallot, and we're going to cook this until the shallot softens. That's only going to take about a minute. This is how we're building a very flavorful pan sauce. It's layer upon layer of flavor. Remember, we already have the flavor in there that came from the chicken. After we saute the shallots here, I've got a teaspoon of flour, and that's just going to help make our sauce feel a little bit richer. That's right. And we want to cook it for about 30 seconds, and that's to get rid of any of that raw flour taste. So that's great. I'm going to turn the heat up to medium-high and stir in all this liquid. We're going to bring this up to a simmer. We're going to reduce this down until it's reduced to about a half a cup. All right, so you can see that this is thickened, and it's thickened pretty quickly. It's only been about 2 minutes. Now, just to make sure, I'm going to pour it into a measuring cup, and we're looking for a half a cup.
Perfect.
All right. So, back into the skillet it goes, along with any of the accumulated juices from the chicken. I'm just going to use the foil to kind of keep the chicken in there and pour off any of the juices, and we'll let that cook for 30 more seconds. All right, that's it. So off heat, and a tablespoon and a half each of fresh parsley and fresh chives, and a tablespoon of butter. I'm using a non-stick whisk because we have a non-stick pan. Don't want to scratch it. Look at that sauce. That's beautiful.
It smells great, too.
All right, now, just going to pour this kind of around the chicken pieces. I don't want to get it over the chicken because we work so hard to get that crisp skin. Oh, this is looking great. Piece for you, Chris. Get some good sauce on the bottom.
Looks great.
Well,
terrific
check this
skin.
out.
Very
crisp.
Skin test.
Well, you can hear it. How crispy that is. Get you a little bit more of that sauce.
That may be the best chicken skin I've had in a very long time. It's delicious. So for great skillet roast chicken, you sauteed the chicken skin down, then we braised the chicken, took the chicken out, removed the sauce, and we reserved that for a little bit later, re-crisped the skin, made a great pan sauce, and there you have it. For America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a great recipe for a perfect skillet roast chicken and a great sauce too. En France, le soufflé est pour les artistes culinaires. Vive le soufflé! But we're in America now, and we go to make a soufflé. We're going to get rid of the soufflé dish. We're going to dump the hat, and we're going to take up a skillet. That's right, a skillet instead. So forget about art and say hello to Julia as she magically transforms this sacred French dessert into an easy American-style skillet soufflé. So how do we get started?
Well, we're making a lemon souffle, and a few things about getting that lemon flavor to shine through. Most souffles start with a base, either a bouillie, which is milk and flour cooked together, or a bechamel, which is a milk-based sauce thickened with flour and butter. Both of those we tried. Didn't like them in a lemon souffle. Like them for other souffles, but it really tempered the lemon flavor, so it didn't taste very good. So those didn't work.
In other words, those might work for chocolate.
Yep, or even a cheese
souffle. Something
souffle.
lighter like lemon. Okay.
That's right. What we did like was a simple souffle with whipped eggs and whipped yolks. So the key is to obviously separate the eggs. 5 eggs. 2 things about cracking and separating eggs. 1, try to crack it on the counter. The solid surface makes a cleaner break so that it's easier to transfer the yolk from shell to shell.
That's totally non-intuitive.
It is.
That a flat surface would give you a crisper
I know.
break.
After breaking a lot of eggs,
Really?
I know this from experience. Yep. And the other thing is cold eggs separate a lot easier than warm eggs. And the other thing is, if you do a little bowl for the white, you can then transfer white by white into the mixing bowl. Therefore, if you screw one up and get a little yolk in it, you can pitch it, because if a little yolk gets in the whites, you kind of got to start over, because the yolks will prevent the whites from whipping properly.
Well, there is a little tip here, which you can, if you use the eggshell itself, the yolk seems attracted to it, and it's easier to get the yolk out of the whites.
Ah.
I farm fresh eggs. I don't want to throw away any whites.
Yeah, that's
It actually
painful.
works pretty well.
So, 5 eggs, taking my time, making sure to get no yolk into that white. And these are large eggs, of course. There we go. Into the mixing bowl. We'll bring both the yolks and the whites over to our mixer. And we're going to mix the whites first. Few tricks on whipping egg whites. First, use a clean bowl, obviously. If there's any grease in the bowl, it'll prevent them from whipping up well. Also, a little cream of tartar goes a long way to helping the whites ensure that they whip properly. So that was 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar.
Now, cream of tartar is an acid, and acid denatures protein, and the egg white's mostly protein, and therefore it's less likely to get tough if you overbeat it and squeeze out the water. So that really works well. The other thing, of course, is sugar. Performs a similar function and gives you more leeway in terms of getting the egg whites done properly, and they're less likely to become overbeaten.
That's right. We're going to hold off on adding the sugar just a moment. We're going to start a little bit on a lower speed. Going to break the eggs up and get them a little foamy. You can see they're getting a little foamy. The eggs have broken up a little bit. And now we're going to start with the mixer on to sprinkle in a little bit of salt and 1/3 cup of white sugar. Let's see how these are looking. Pretty good.
That's Mr. Softy.
That's Mr. Soft Bake, right. And so stiff peaks really aren't that much longer. I have a hand whisk here. I like to take it to a soft peak and then do it by hand. That way you definitely don't get styrofoam. And there we go.
Yeah.
Perfectly stiff peaks, nice and smooth. All right, so put this aside. We're going to transfer these beautiful stiff peak egg whites to a bowl, and then we're going to use the same bowl, don't need to wash it, to whip the yolks. So again, we have the 5 yolks, and these won't get as lofty and foamy as the whites will, but they'll get a little foamy. And to this, we're also going to add 1/3 cup of sugar.
I bet a lot of viewers are wondering why we can let the egg whites sit for a long time while we do this. With the addition of the cream of tartar and also the sugar, those will remain stable for quite a while. If we hadn't added those, they would start to deteriorate.
That's right, and weep, you know, get liquidy again. All right, so we're going to put this and only get it, you know, a little light, a little foamy, kind of creamy. That's what you're looking for. It only takes about a minute or so. And so now we're going to sprinkle in the lemon flavor. This is a teaspoon of freshly grated lemon zest, 2 tablespoons all-purpose flour with the mixer on. Now, this is kind of an unusual ingredient in this style of souffle, but this really prevents the souffle from tasting like styrofoam, just egg whites. It gives it sort of a creamy texture. Last but not least, lemon juice. Fresh lemon juice, not the bottled kind. This is 1/3 cup. All right, and that's it. I'm going to give it one go around with the whisk, make sure nothing's left in that divot. There you see, pretty watery. Lighter color, obviously, than the egg yolks, and you can smell the lemon flavor coming out of there.
I can do that.
Make sure it's nice and evenly incorporated.
So this is really unlike any other souffle I've seen made. Usually you beat yolks so they're really thick and ribbon.
Yeah.
So this is a very loose base.
It is, in part because, again, we wanted that lemon flavor. Whenever you add any dairy, the lemon flavor just died. So, looks pretty uniform. So now we're going to gently fold in the egg whites. And as with any sort of egg white dessert, you sort of start with about 1/4 of the egg whites and you temper them in. You can't really fold the first few in because it's so liquidy. So you just gently stir them in. So now that we've tempered that base of egg yolks, we're going to add the rest of the whites here. I like using the whisk because it's such a liquidy batter, and these egg whites are so dry that you can sort of just lift it up and let them fall through the tines of the whisk, and I feel like it incorporates it really nicely without being too harsh, and you don't lose all the air bubbles.
Good technique. Excellent technique.
All right.
I actually just learned something.
It took 10 years.
Dear diary, after 10 years, I really learned something today.
All right, we're going to set this aside because now sort of the aha moment is when we use the skillet, which is really unusual. So over medium-low heat, this is just a tablespoon of butter. 10-inch skillet, pretty crucial, because we're talking about surface area and souffle. So if you use an 8-inch skillet, it won't fit. 12-inch skillet will be very flat.
Well, it might come up like this. That might be very dramatic.
It might be all over the bottom of your oven. You just want to swirl the butter around so that it really coats the bottom and most of the sides of the skillet. And then you just add the souffle batter right to the skillet. What the skillet does is give it a nice brown crust on the bottom, which we like, but it also jump-starts the cooking and sets the outside before it has a chance to fall. And sometimes, just because it looks pretty, I sort of smooth it out and do a little bit of a swirl in the top. So that's it, pretty easy. We're gonna let it cook on this stove until you see the outside start to bubble a little bit, and you can see that it starts to set. So what you do is you're cooking the outside, that bottom crust.
So this is just a minute or two on top of stuff?
About a minute or two.
And what's the heat, medium, low?
Medium, low. And again, we're just setting the eggs on the bottom, the outside, that makes a nice base so it can souffle in the oven. As you shake the pan, you see it starts to move as a cohesive unit, like the outside is setting. Bubbling around the edges, that's what we're looking for. So we're gonna turn the heat off, put it into a 375-degree oven right in the middle, and we're gonna let that bake for 7 to 10 minutes. 7 minutes to start. Don't open the oven door, just let it go for 7 minutes, and then we can start checking it.
And watch the handle when you take it out.
Yeah, key.
How many times have I burned myself?
At least once.
About a dozen times. Meanwhile, Lisa has a few words to say about her testing of lemon reamers.
Well, Chris, when you just need a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice for a recipe, you can squeeze it by hand, but we prefer to use a gadget that does the job a little more effectively. We looked at 7 different models of lemon juicers, and they're priced from about $3 to $28. This style, this works, this old-fashioned reamer, but the problem is after you're done squeezing, you've got seeds, you've got pulp, you have to strain it. It's another step, another thing to wash. Who needs it? This style, it has a collecting cup. It does strain out the pulp and the seeds. Problem is, you can't pour through it. You have to turn it almost all the way over, and then those nicely collected seeds fall out. This one worked a little better, but still, extra pieces to wash. Who needs that? We found the style we liked in these press-type squeezers. They're not all alike. This one, very uncomfortable to squeeze. Hard edges, you put the lemon in and you're way out there, jumping up and down, trying to squeeze this thing, not comfortable. This one, which was the really deluxe one, $28, broke in 2 pieces. Total waste of money. We even did another one just to be sure. The bolt is not right on that one. This is the one that we like the best. It's the Amco Houseworks Enameled Lemon Squeezer. Yellow, so you know it's for lemon. They also make them in green for limes and orange for oranges. It's a little bit not intuitive. You always want to put the lemon in like this, not the right way. You want to look for the holes, put the juice side down, and squeeze. These are really easy to squeeze, really comfortable. All the juice flows right out. So it works great. You get this little hockey puck, all the seeds, all the pulp is trapped, the juice came out. Very easy to clean. For $11.95, it is a great tool for your kitchen.
All right, let's check her out. Oh, she's a beauty.
Oh, you do the, I'll do the ooh. That is gorgeous.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Yep.
So this is a little powdered sugar in a strainer. Sometimes nice to sprinkle it over the top. And of course, as with any souffle, you want to eat it pretty much right away. That way you get the nice creamy texture.
That's my favorite thing about making souffles.
I know.
I don't have to wait.
In the center, when that little creamy, it makes almost a sauce. And on the outside and the bottom, it's a little bit firmer. Just melts in your mouth.
This is phenomenal.
It's good lemon flavor, isn't it?
Oh, man. So the secret to a great lemon souffle, it turns out, is what the base is. Egg yolks and a couple tablespoons of flour with some lemon juice. It wasn't that thick, it was nice and light, so the flavor of lemon really comes through. And of course, we used a skillet, which sets it in the bottom nicely, nice rise in the oven. So there you have it. From America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, a fabulous recipe for a really easy but delicious lemon skillet souffle.